Welcome. Pro Football Doc Sports Injury Central podcast. Very special guest today. And one more football guest before next week. We're going to bring on some March Madness and then NBA guests. But I really wanted to get in one of my favorite guys and guests, probably the only guy that we repeat all the time with. But he's so good with all this stuff. Mr. Evan Silva, who everyone in the football world knows, and of course established the run. His venture has been wildly successful. And Evan, I hear about it all the time because, like, I will admit, I don't go personally on your site. I mean, I just don't do stuff like that.
That's okay.
But
I go on your site, Doc.
No, well, thank you. But in any case, my guys, my researchers and content and analysts, they're like, well, establish the run says, Evan says, da 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 all the time, and so we do utilize it as part of our stuff, as you know, since we customize each injury and each thing for each player. So congrats on that success, and welcome to the show again.
Hey, thanks for having me back. I was hoping to meet up with you at the Combine. I didn't make it myself, though. I know you didn't make it either. Hopefully at some point we'll be able to. I know that you went to a million Combines back in the day and all that, and you need to get out there. It's a little different now. You need to get out there at some point.
Look, yeah. I get it. And I actually planned on trying to go this year finally, because talking to you, you said you were going. I said, okay, I would go. And honestly, a couple things happened. Number one, I ended up staying at the Super Bowl a lot longer than I expected to. I didn't plan on staying for the game, but then the Chiefs were in it, and my son wanted to go. What 10-year-old doesn't love Patrick Mahomes? So I stayed at the whole week, didn't get back till Monday. And then the Combine snuck up quick. And look, I live in San Diego. It's different to Chicago to Indianapolis. I was like, flight change, right, so long, cold, and I just can't do it this year. Yeah. But I keep saying next year. Look, I've been to 20 combines. If I did go, it would be a totally different experience for me, because I wouldn't go behind the quote medical doors, right? Before, I was always just behind the medical doors. It would be completely unfair. I could probably finagle a credential to get back there medically, but it wouldn't be right? Because then I couldn't report on anything. And actually, now that I do this, their antennas are probably up. I wouldn't be invited back behind the curtains, kind of deal. I think it would be fun, but you're right, it's different. I mean, I'm so old, Evan. When I first went, the only restaurant was St. Elmo's. I mean, Prime wasn't even close. I mean, there was nothing else. It was St. Elmo's, and it was Ike and Jonesy's. That was it. As a matter of fact,
I think Ike and Jonesy's is still there.
Oh, it's still there.
Yeah.
Ike and Jonesy's, but Ike and Jonesy's was the only place in St. Elmo's.
Yeah.
And honestly, the big Hilton that had the Ditkas and some of the other hotels didn't even exist. I mean, the Hyatt Regency had just been built. It was the Omni Severin was the main hotel, and so forth. So a lot of changes in Indy, no question. And everyone says it's great networking and whatever. And I would have gone to see you, but just too hard. So well,
let's do it next year. I didn't make it because I had a doctor's appointment. I was going to go on Saturday, but I had a sort of important doctor's appointment on Friday. Everything's fine, but I hadn't been to the doctor in a really long time, so I was kind of worried that, when you don't go to the doctor for a really long time.
Yeah.
Okay. You could, but I had a doctor's appointment the day before, so I didn't go.
Telemedicine. We could do a doctor's visit right now.
No, I'm doing good. Actually, the appointment went great. I'm so glad that I finally did it, because it was giving me anxiety that I hadn't been in the doctor in freaking 8 years. So.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. I'm with you there.
Yeah.
So here's the best part about having Evan Silva on the podcast is that, first of all, I still miss way back in the day when you and I and Warren would just chat for quite a while on Friday nights randomly, and it was fun to learn from each other. I think you guys, etc. But my guys are great now. See, I don't prep a lot for the podcast and stuff, especially for guests that I know. They give me a rundown of topics that we can go to.
Mm-hmm.
They've given me the rundown of the last time you were on, and we could, for fun, go through that in terms of preseason, who we faded, were right to fade, or who we were high on and who was right. And that might be fun to go through. But you're so good at it. We can go with either of those topics. Jacob's done the rundown, or I'll let you fire away questions and we can go the other way, whatever you prefer.
Yeah, I want to ask you a couple questions right off the bat. Number one, I'm a Cubs season ticket holder, and so I care about the Cubs a little bit. My daughter is just so into it. Like, our
I was going
favorite
to
thing
say, establish the run. I mean, establish the runs. Are you doing baseball now?
No, we're not. I mean, I don't even think we're gonna, because it's 162 games. Like, you need a big team to cover baseball, and it's just the ROI is just not there. So we're doing, we obviously we do football, we do golf. We have a great golf product, and we also have an awesome basketball product. But yeah, I don't think we're gonna do baseball. It's just so much work.
Yeah, no, we do baseball, but we don't do it day to day with pitching matchups. It's just general injuries. And we do golf. We do a lot on Tiger Woods. We did some Bryson. We did some whenever there's an injury.
Yeah,
that's golf.
Right, but let me ask you about this guy. All right, Seiya Suzuki.
Okay.
Do you know about baseball? I don't even know if you know about. I can't remember you tweeting anything about baseball.
Well, look, obviously because of the name Pro Football Doc. Okay. You'll be shocked to know this. I actually, quote, covered the Cubs as a junior physician. There were at least one or two games where I was the team physician at Wrigley, kind of thing. There were senior people above me. I've worked with the Minnesota Twins and covered their spring training, once again, as a more junior physician. I say football because I spent almost 2 decades as the head team physician. And so my football experience is greater. But I think my baseball and even NBA with the Bulls and with the Minnesota Timberwolves experience in coverage is probably greater than anyone else who's a talking head out there medically. But I don't push that narrative because, that I feel like my experience there is better than most, but it's not as extensive as in football. So I do know something about baseball and basketball, but in terms of current players and their exact nuances, like the guys in the room here right now make fun of me. There's one guy in the room that needs to see a player's face to know who they are, and he knows everybody. Okay. I don't know players' faces,
neither do I.
But I will literally see a guy moving and say that's so and so. Not looking. Some guys look at numbers. The numbers drove me crazy this year, right? Because I didn't memorize all the numbers, but just the way that he moves, or his size, or his fluidity. That's why I go, oh, that's so and so. Kind of. That's how I recognize players. I have that ability in football. I don't have that ability in baseball. But happy to answer your question. And I love the Cubs. I spent a lot of time in Chicago. I'll get to my favorite Cubs story later. But go ahead.
Hey, nice. All right, Seiya Suzuki. I'm just going to give you all the information that I know about it. Seiya Suzuki kind of showed up to spring training. He was scratched for the first game. And everybody was like, what? And then it was announced that he had a strained oblique. They're calling it a moderately strained oblique, 6 to 8 weeks recovery time. They've pretty much already ruled him out for opening day. I don't know. Oblique is your butt. No,
oblique
that's your glute.
Your torso. It's like your thorax. It's sort of side muscles along the abdomen for twisting. And important for hitters for the twisting.
It's his left oblique, and he's a right-handed hitter and thrower.
Right. And so it's important for hitting because of the twisting. It's important for throwing in pitchers because of the twisting.
Let me add in a little bit of context. I have no idea if it matters. Obviously, that's why I'm asking you. Seiya Suzuki, his first year, he was they got him from Japan. And last year he was a rookie, and he bulked up like big time in the off season. Like, I mean, it's noticeable how much bigger he is. I don't know if that, I just wanted to add that little bit of context.
Yeah. I mean, I'll admit, I don't know the player intimately in terms of his style and what kind of player he is, but oblique is a big deal for, in baseball, for hitting and throwing, almost a bigger deal for a pitcher. Right. And, 6 to 8, I actually think that's realistic. if it were a pitcher, I'd say that's optimistic.
Remember, Max Scherzer had the oblique last year, and he missed multiple games with that.
Yeah, and that's what we were saying.
Right.
So I think it's realistic that he could play, in 6-8 weeks, and he might be closer to 6 than 8, depending on severity. But it is important for torso.
Is that something that's easily aggravated? Like, how do you treat it? Rest or
rest in standard rehab? But in baseball, look, for football, you could even inject it and play, but you're not going to do that for baseball with 162 games. And obviously, as you know, in baseball, you play the long game, not the short game. But one of the things that, usually what we do when we opine on baseball, the guys in the room, they do a checklist and tell me what kind of player he is. I mean, like when Patrick Mahomes has his high ankle sprain against Jacksonville, we're saying he's going to play fine against the Bengals because he's an off-platform player. And the way he changes arm angles, he doesn't need to stick the back foot into the ground and throw. Well, we don't need a checklist for that. We know, or I know just from watching football. And that's the difference for us in baseball and other sports. But Wrigley's awesome. I used to, you realize I went to school there, went to medical school there at Northwestern. And I used to have
awesome.
I used to have friends come into town, and you want to go to a Cubs game. So here's my Cubs story. Cool. So people wanted to, sit in the bleachers, right? I mean, that's the place all the cool kids and the young kids would want to go. And I probably didn't have access to better seats sometimes, unless I was lucky enough when I was a senior resident. Okay, sometimes I was the official team physician and I got better seats and whatever. But every time, this is the thing I did with friends without fail. We'd go to a game in the bleachers, and they'd be having a rip-roaring time, right? And the whole deal. And by the way, one of my most prized pictures, but I have to relocate it, is when we were senior residents, we went to Wrigley Field because we had access because of the thing. And we were going to take a picture at Wrigley Field, and Harry Carey came by, and he took a picture with all of us. I got to get a copy
awesome.
of that
So awesome
picture. But anyways, back to the story. This handful of people or more that would come, I'd take them to the bleachers and be sitting there. And somewhere around the 3rd or 4th inning, I'd say, okay, I got a quiz question for you. I'm like, okay. And we'll bet the next beverage, or we'll bet whatever it is. Head down. Okay. What's the score of the game? Nobody
knew.
What inning are we in? That was more got it wrong than right.
Yeah.
And the easiest one in the world, that at best was 50-50. I'm telling you, at best, it was probably under 50-50. My final question was, who's playing today? And they'd say the Cubs. No. Who are the Cubs playing today? It would be like in the 4th or 5th inning, and they would know. It was all about the fun and the atmosphere, right, etc.
Yeah.
So Wrigley's a great place. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Awesome. That's great. Yeah. Harry Carey, famously would go out until 3 a.m, downtown, and obviously always would have a crowd around him, and I mean that dude partied hardcore. Famously, also he couldn't remember a lot of his announcing, because I mean the announcers would drink beers in the they would drink beers while they were announcing back then. And so by the 7th or 8th inning, he said he forgot so many 7th and 8th and 9th innings. But
well, all right, I'll let you. Since you're going there, I'm going to go to the next level. Obviously, we were clowning around as senior residents.
Yeah,
and we weren't just taking a picture on the field. We were taking a picture, and we sort of borrowed, and we were pretending to be beer vendors, and Harry Carey came in the picture with us. So that's the full picture.
Well, that's why he went in the picture.
He was checking if we had any beer.
Yeah. All right. So on to serious matters. Kyler Murray, ACL meniscus. It happened. When did it happen? In weeks? What week?
Monday Night Football, early December. And the reason why I remember that is it was the only game all year that I was actually on a plane flight, and the internet on the plane didn't really work. And so that was unfortunate, and pretty clear by video as soon as I got later in the plane flight, got internet to work, that was an ACL,
Week 14.
and maybe more. And look, that's going to be an ordeal. It's interesting. A lot of people in Arizona asked me about that during Radio Row, locals. And I asked locals, like, what does this mean, that Kyler Murray picture where there was a dog or dog's paw or an animal's paw in the picture and whatever? And it was interesting. The Arizona beat reporters would just shrug and say, that's Kyler. I'm like, well, what does that mean? Because that's Kyler. I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, it was interesting. Here's the thing. From a medical perspective, can Kyler Murray be ready and play from the pocket week 1? Yes, a meniscus repair extends the recovery timeline. The answer is yes. Well known, Phillip Rivers did it, but different type of quarterback, right? And Phillip had a pretty quick recovery, but Phillip was pretty tough also, and not to mention the surgeon. Just kidding on that part, but I'm just having fun there. Different type of player. Kyler Murray, if he is essentially pocket bound, would he play? Maybe not, right? I mean, you wouldn't maybe want him to play. Same argument with Lamar.
You watch the scroll on NFL Network, like they're saying he's not going to be ready for week 1.
Well, I'll tell you this, Evan. Kyler Murray, it would be a surprise to me if he got back to 100% at any point this year. Because it was a December injury at any point this year that he was 100%. Now, I'm not saying that he won't play. I'm not saying he won't have some good games, but 100% Kyler Murray ineffective on his knee, I don't know that he gets there this season at all. Then, of course, new coaches, new scheme, new this, no ramp up time, no install time, and working with new coaches. This is not going to be the best season, I don't believe, for Kyler. And the other thing is now that he got his gig, and I'm not calling him soft, does he really have to push it? I don't know. There's no pressure to. I mean, maybe it's.
You mean now that he got the big deal last offseason?
Yeah, and I'm not bagging on him. I don't know Kyler Murray at all, but I'm just saying, okay. Look, Russell Wilson didn't have a great first year in Denver, right? I mean, it's hard when you're with a new regime, right? It's not that easy. And we'll go to it. I don't mean to go sideways, but first of all, Kyler Murray, what percent of Kyler's value is with his feet versus with his arm?
So much.
I mean, right?
So much.
A lot. And that's why I go, I mean, I would definitely fade Kyler Murray,
and this has nothing to do with his injury, but I sometimes get the feeling from his body language, the kind of the way that he carries himself. Like, I don't think he loves playing football. And that can maybe be backed up by the video game stuff. And I don't know. I always get the feeling that he's going to go play baseball at some point.
I don't know the kid, but if I'm making those assumptions, I'd say he might sail off into the sunset with bags full of money and not worry about it, right? But and baseball ain't that easy to play either, right? No. I mean, if you're not into it, but I don't know. I don't try and impugn that on a guy. When a guy, look, I was there standing next to LT in that famous AFC Championship game, and I didn't know it at the time. But boy, when the game was over and I was on the team bus, my phone had blown up. What the hell was up with LT? I mean, he's sitting there all depressed.
I remember that.
Right? Yeah. That was the AFC Championship game, the one that Phillip Rivers played 6 days after a knee scope on the torn ACL. He got a lot of grief on that. So I get his body language did not look good, but I can tell you it was because he was so dejected because he was disappointed that he couldn't help the team. He wasn't detached from the team. He, maybe he would be better off being the rah-rah guy, but he was just so disappointed and he cared so much about wanting to get to the Super Bowl. And so I never held that against LT, but I know LT and I was standing next to him. So when I see Kyler Murray looking like he's pouting, I don't necessarily impugn that he is. When he looks like he doesn't like football, I get that interpretation, but I'll give you another one. If you look at my Twitter profile page, the header page is Phillip Rivers and I walking off in the final game in the RCA Dome. And let me tell you, if you go back in history, that was the game that Phillip Rivers got a lot of crap as he walked off and he was jawing at fans. And the national narrative right after the game is he's a bad guy because he was jawing at fans. Let me tell you, fans were yelling expletives and what have you. As we all know, Phillip Rivers does not swear. He looked at it and he was very forceful. And I was standing next to him. I tell you what he said. He said, "Don't you worry, I'll be back. Don't you worry, I'll be back." And he said it with like anger in his eyes and emotion that people thought he was cussing people out. And so I'm going to take Kyler Murray's side on this and not jump to the conclusion of what his emotions and feelings are and whether he likes football by his looks. I just gave you two examples where I think you can be fooled. Now, maybe that is the case.
Well, he also could be frustrated with Cliff Kingsbury's shitty scheme too.
Sure. So from that perspective, I try and not judge reactions. You know, as we've talked about, and I've talked about a bunch, when a guy throws his helmet, I don't impugn that his season is over. He could be pissed that he tweaked his hamstring, even though it's minor, as opposed to a grade 3, you know? So I judge the injury in the video. I don't judge the reaction. So I try not to judge reaction in general, because sometimes it gets misinterpreted. What it looks like may not be what it is, and et cetera. So, but with Kyler Murray, I mean, I'm going hard. I think it's going to be very hard for him to be anywhere near himself this year, not only because of the injury, the meniscus repair, and the timeline and the late season, and because so much of his value is on mobility, et cetera, but also new scheme. So, you know, and okay, so we look downstream. What does that mean for receivers and this and that and Arizona? And you know, there's a lot of work to do for the new coach, et cetera. But yeah, that's that. But at the same token, let's launch a little bit into Brock Purdy, who finally this week will have his surgery. One of our big mantras down in Arizona, Radio Row, was the quarterback conundrum for the 49ers. Jimmy G was healthy, ready to go, but they don't want him. Trey Lance is the next healthiest. Hopefully in the next month or more, will get healthy. No guarantee, but he's still green and got to get into the system. Brock Purdy, they feel comfortable with, and they want him. But how can you get a timeline on recovery before you've had the surgery? How can you get a timeline on recovery before you even met with the doctor? And that was the case down when we were in Arizona for the Super Bowl. He hadn't met with the doctor yet. And then now you have this delay because of inflammation, motion. Is it impossible that he could be ready week 1? No, I think it's possible. Is it guaranteed? No. And that's what I was saying back in February down in Arizona. And the 49ers have quite the conundrum here. This last season, you can argue they're a team ready to win the Super Bowl. John Lynch is great. San Diegan, I stand behind him. And I'm not telling him anything he doesn't know. I haven't talked to him about this, but he knows more than I do. The quarterback position let him down last year. Can you mess around with it again this year on a maybe or expectation? I mean, look, here's what's going to happen. And Justin, you can clip this. Here's what's going to happen. After Brock Purdy's surgery on Friday, it will get declared a success. That's like declaring your team's draft a success the minute the draft is over. You can't judge it that way. You got to judge it longitudinally. You got to judge it when he's back and throwing. And can you pin the hopes of an entire franchise for the season on the recovery of one injury? I think they're going to have to go with a contingency plan. And just for insurance. Now, I'm not suggesting Tom Brady's coming out of retirement. I'm not suggesting Aaron Rodgers is going to San Francisco. Who knows? But, you know, you got to think, you know, if I'm going to speculate at all, I mean, maybe Matt Ryan's on the table, reunite with Kyle Shanahan, because once Indy releases him. But they can't sit pat. There's no way they can sit pat on Trey Lance and Brock Purdy, both with injury issues, both young. And the other thing you have to think about, Evan, I think, is let's just say Brock Purdy makes it for week 1. how good is Brock Purdy going to be without an off season? I mean, he's not Tom Brady. I mean, just add water and go, I mean, you probably wanted to develop him further this off season and get into the hang of things and make the offense around him a little more complex, etc.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have those opportunities anymore, even in the best case scenario, if he's ready to go week 1.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting situation for San Francisco.
Let me hit you with one more.
Mm-hmm.
So this year's free agent wide receiver class in particular is just is garbage. Okay. I mean, the number one receiver probably, well, I think in terms of like projected contractual value would be Jacoby Myers,
Okay.
Decent slot receiver, but, when undrafted, allergic to the end zone, I mean, he's like a role player, a good role player, but he might be the highest paid free agent wide receiver this year. Clearly the most talented free agent wide receiver pending releases is Odell Beckham. Odell Beckham's still only 30 years old. It seemed like, well, I don't know, some reporters seem to be making it seem like he was going to come back late last season. That never happened. Never even seemed like it was very close, actually. Is he going to come back? Is he going to can he still be good? Can he be, Odell Beckham close to his prime? Or I don't know, what are your thoughts on Odell Beckham at this point?
Well, full disclosure, Odell Beckham has kind of become my casual Twitter friend, and DM here and there. I don't break any news on him. I respect him. Yeah. I actually said something about his rehab and recovery. He objected. And then we sort of talked it out on Twitter, and he agreed with me. And he's actually agreed to come on the podcast. We'll get him on sometime this off season. But I don't try and break news and say, hey, when you coming back and what's your thing? Mm-hmm. Look, I think it was a stretch for him to come back and be 100% late this season. And teams, when they brought him in, looked at it and said, remember, it was a Super Bowl injury. So his timeline, you talk about Kyler Murray being late season. There's no later season than tearing your ACL in the Super Bowl. But I have more fear. Odell Beckham hopefully is not listening. I have more fear of the drop off for a 30-plus-year-old wide receiver a year out of the NFL than I do for health of his knee. Now, I do respect his work ethic. I do respect him. I think he could be, if you're asking me right now, and I'm a novice at fantasy drafts, okay, but if you're telling me right now, whatever round it is, the two receivers that are on the board are Jacoby Myers and Odell Beckham, I'd have to take Odell Beckham. Now, maybe I'm jaded, okay, in terms of knowing, but his upside would be a lot more. So I would take Odell Beckham, sight unseen right now, not knowing what team he's going to, and same with Jacoby Myers. Yeah, so, but that's just sort of timeline of recovery and so forth. We can go through some of these things real quickly here. Jacob's done all this work. He'll want me. Javonte Williams. Look, I don't know why this is a mystery that he's going to be longer, this whole stuff that's come out. Maybe there's more to the injury. It could be week 1. It could be week 12. It could be not. It could be halfway. It could be this, that, the other. We said through Sports Injury Central, when it happened in Denver, I still remember he was going to from the right to the left on the TV screen. That was an ACL and LCL at least. Now there's some rumors of PCL too, but ACL, LCL at least. So you're in J.K. Dobbins territory, and we all know how he did this year. I actually think he did fantastically well in the end, but if you look at his season, that was one of our easiest under future props that we had last year. And that's not because he didn't do well and not because he's not a great player, because it was a multi-ligament injury. Well, that's what Javonte Williams has. So I would not put a lot of value on Javonte Williams this coming season. Breece Hall, ACL, week 7. That seems more like an isolated ACL. But we all know, look at Saquon Barkley. How was his first year back from an ACL? Adrian Peterson's the outlier. He's not the norm. Kyler Murray, we talked about. Wan'Dale Robinson, ACL week 11. Robert Woods, ACL week 10 last year. How did Robert Woods do? Not the same guy, not the same receiver,
He's a free agent now too, and he's interesting because he's a second year off an ACL. So, and he was on a new team last year.
Robert Woods is.
Yeah,
Robert Woods
He's a little
is.
old though now. You know, he's 31 now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's the over 30 magic number, right?
Yes, exactly.
Kind of deal.
Oh, and you buy it. I mean, that's something that you don't think is totally just a made up narrative. Like you kind of buy into that.
I think it's like anything.
Yeah.
I hate when people say high ankle, that's 4 weeks. No, it depends on the type of player and the position, right? And then say over 30.
That's our most despised injury is the high ankle sprain because it can just ruin your season.
Oh, it hurts fantasy the most, I think.
It's
ACL is like whatever, you can replace it.
Yeah.
You know, high ankle, you don't know it's 4
Well, at
weeks.
least with
6
ACL,
weeks,
like you know the guy's going to be out.
Yep, exactly.
High ankle sprain, like, oh, is he going to come back? Oh, he's not back this week. Oh, he's back, but he's terrible.
He's terrible. Exactly. Yep.
Well,
Yep.
I mean, Evan, I guess that's why you need 6 scores and the projections for injury week to week. And that's why we were so high on Patrick Mahomes, even though we said he's hurt, he's going to be able to play around it just because of the type of guy that he is. But we also, in the first week, we're saying hammer the under rushing yards, and of course, come the Super Bowl, we said take the over rushing yards, et cetera. And that's just based on injury stuff. Customization. Tony Pollard, look, his fractured fibula gives him a better chance to come back to the Cowboys because he's probably not going to get his big free agency deal.
Was he officially franchised yet?
Yes,
he's
franchised.
Yeah, he was.
Well,
franchised.
then he's back
Yeah,
to the
yeah.
Cowboys. Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Thank you. Rashad Penny, fractured fibula. Like he's had some bad injury luck. I'm sitting in a room with San Diego
He's a free
State
agent
Aztecs.
too.
He's a free agent. Yep, exactly. Thank you.
I mean,
I think he's an interesting free agent because he's just had such bad injury luck, and he's still pretty young. And I mean, he's like he's a baller. He when he's healthy, like he can run it as well as anyone.
I'd take a flyer on him. It depends on when, not in the top rounds, but I'd take a flyer on him depending on what he had.
Absolutely.
Odell Beckham, we covered. Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, we sort of covered.
Another one you guys talked about last time that's still relevant is Michael Thomas.
Yeah. Geez.
Well, Michael Thomas, I mean, I'm not going to, I think I made some quote headlines when I said Michael Thomas is more likely to be the third receiver on his team.
I remember you saying that. Yeah.
Than a top 3 receiver in the NFL, right? And yeah, he had more additional injuries. He made a pretty good comeback early and then fell off. And, in the end, it was Olave and Landry had his issues. But, I mean, Michael Thomas, we'll have to regather on him. But at this point in time, he's 3 years removed
from a full season.
From a full season now.
By the way, he's expected to be released like any minute, and he's going to be a free agent.
Yeah, if I were grading, and maybe, if you're saying if some of the receivers that we just talked about, I would probably say, and a lot of this is injury analysis heavy, Odell Beckham ahead of certainly Wan'Dale Robinson and certainly who's the other guy we talked about? Jacoby Meyer, and certainly Odell ahead of Michael Thomas. But Michael Thomas, where Michael Thomas ends up going, I think he has a chance of being healthy. It's more scheme and fit and how they're going to use him before he really settles in.
He's no longer a number 1. He needs to go somewhere he dominates in the red zone.
Well, and also, and a lot of his success was like Sean Payton, like lining him up and he would motion into the slot, and he's like a big mismatch in the slot. And he was really quick, before he messed up his legs and his ankles and all that. I mean, that would be a big concern for me because he's like an agility route running type receiver. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to apply your injury takes.
So I think injury wise, I think he's going to be okay. I'd be more worried about not playing football for basically 3 years and being over 30. Who knows? Maybe he's going to end up in Denver. I don't know. I mean, things have a funny way of working out. So those are some of our big things for the draft, the combines. I'm glad that there aren't really medical leaks at the combines anymore. I'm glad there aren't Wonder leaks. I just don't think it's that fair to players. But we still do our analysis. I mean, Hendon Hooker, I mean, that's going to impact him. He's not going to be ready to go, and a rookie quarterback, that's going to affect his draft stock. Dalton Kincaid, I think, will be fine with his back fracture, believe it or not. Jackson Smith and Jibba really depends on, his flexibility in the exam, but hopefully his hamstring isn't a recurring issue. And the other kid with the knee dislocation,
Dante Demas.
yeah, doesn't bode well.
That wasn't a pretty injury to watch.
I mean, I don't know that kid's draftable at this
Yeah.
point in time, unfortunately. All right, I'm going through Jacob's list here. Hopefully we'll do well here. Let's see. You were on August 8th. He's got some notes here. We talked about Matthew Stafford and his elbow. I remember saying Matthew Stafford's elbow, I'm not worried about it. And did you move up Justin Jefferson ahead of Cooper Kupp because of the time missed from Stafford? You were talking about it on the podcast.
No, I think I had Cooper Kupp ahead of him. I don't know. I had them right next to each other, and I juggled them back and forth a few times. I can't remember where I finished.
Yeah, gotcha. So I think you were talking about you might be moving him up over Kupp as a result of what we're saying about his elbow, not because his elbow wasn't going to be fine, but because of the missed time.
Mm-hmm.
And look, I still don't know. I mean, my thought, given what we know publicly about Matthew Stafford's neck injury, is that he's safe for having a neck fusion surgery and then being fine. Apparently, he's not having the surgery, but still returning. So we'll follow that. The other one we talked about last year was J.K. Dobbins of the left knee. Yeah, we know that, kudos to him. He overachieved. He had a second scope. He overachieved. And look, if it were a 24-game season, he might have hit his.
Broke
He was
the prop. Yeah.
by December, he was higher yards per game than that would have hit the prop.
He
But
finished with 520. So, like you said, yeah, he just needed
and I
more
think
games.
400 of them came in December,
Yeah,
right? I
yeah.
mean, I think his season prop was what, 8 something.
And like half of them
825,
came
yeah.
on like 2 or 3 long runs. Like he was
Yes.
breaking long runs. You remember?
Yeah, I remember he was breaking long runs that should have been touchdowns.
Yes.
Mhm.
Right.
He looked good running when he was doing it. Yeah.
But my hat's off to him. A lot of heart in that guy. So that was an easy one. Chris Godwin, we sort of panned him coming off the ACL.
Yeah,
He turned it on late too, didn't he?
he wound up catching a lot of balls, but he was not as effective. I mean,
Yeah, and we expected our preseason 6 score on him was 62, expecting 62% of his typical Chris Godwin output. Maybe he exceeded that by a little bit,
Just the catches, yeah.
but he wasn't at 90. I mean,
no.
Saquon Barkley, we were high on preseason 6 score 93.
right.
Obviously, he hit his overs.
Yeah,
and
after we did our show, I moved him up. So that's
good.
You helped there, yeah.
And Derrick Henry, we didn't have any worry about the foot thing. And Derrick Henry, for the most part, was Derrick Henry. Michael Thomas, we talked about. Ezekiel Elliott, in the end, we were probably wrong because we said his 6 score was 93 because we weren't worried about his PCL. But obviously, it ended up being a share and his production dropped.
Mhm.
Now, was it really the knee? Was it really this, that, the other? I don't know. But we probably went a little too high on him in terms of his 6 score projection. Michael Gallup, we said 57. And that probably was not inaccurate. 57% of the healthy.
He had kind of a rough year.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that probably was accurate. Jameson Williams recovery, we were saying that he's not going to do anything coming off his ACL from college, and I don't know that he played much, right? Maybe got a game.
He had a
or
couple
something.
big plays, but that's it. He didn't play enough.
Yeah,
didn't.
I don't think he ever played more than like 12 snaps in a game.
Yeah, so so we didn't do too badly, Evan.
It was very good.
Yeah,
we'll have to do it again in the heart of fantasy season for sure.
Great. What else you want to talk about here? I mean, I love how we just have a conversation and everyone else can live in. Where else you want to go, or we can wrap it up?
Yeah,
way.
I have to jump on another call actually with
All right.
with the football guys, with Sigmund Bloom and some of those guys.
Mhm.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Anything you want to plug? Everyone knows Established to Run, but anything
No,
else you want
I'm
to-
coming out with a free agent tracker. It should be published on our website today. If you just want to, it's just a list of all the free agents, sorted by position and sorted in order of how much I think that they're going to get paid. So that's how I do the rankings. And then I'll come out with a top 100 free agent list later this week.
Got it. All right. The great Evan Silva, one of our favorite and really only repeat guests that we keep having on all the time. We'll take a quick break and finish off the second half of the Pro Football Doc Sports Injury Central podcast. All right, we're back. Let's finish off the rest of the Sports Injury Central Pro Football Doc podcast. The jacket's off, no more sport coat because Evan's it's just warm in here. I came from another meeting.
He had the hot takes, yeah.
I had another meeting, so no red shirt today. Took the sport coat off. Lots to talk about in the world, and Evan's a great guest, and I'm actually impressed. We did pretty well on some of our preseason stuff. Maybe we'll chat with him again for football this season. He's a great guest, and then a great supporter of ours. Love him. And then where do you want to go? Basketball, college basketball, baseball, other things. I know we got a good beast of the week.
You mentioned something with our old guest, Dean Blandino, something about a rule change.
Okay. Rule change. Dean Blandino, there's a lot of talk about getting rid of that rugby type play. I'm not going to say who. I actually got a call this week from everyone would know his name, not going to betray any confidences. And he said, look, I'm calling you because of your experience with rugby. And what's the injury potential on this rugby type play? And I started with, look, Patrick Mahomes never sneaks the ball because he dislocated his kneecap, but I don't think it's just because of that sneak play, and it wasn't a rugby scrum push play. And I said the injury risk is higher for falling on the backs of people's legs, although it hasn't really happened yet. If you keep your legs moving, less chance of being injured and anchoring down. He agreed, the whole deal. He goes, what about the risk of neck injury? And I initially said, he says, when he talks to rugby guys, the scrum, they worry about the neck and the whole deal. And I said, there's no question in rugby, they're very careful. The referee's right there, worried about neck injuries. There have been catastrophic neck injuries from this, but this is not a true rugby play. It's not done that way. They don't link arms like they do in rugby and kind of deal and dive down. But then in thinking about it, I changed my mind. I do think this play is it's already dangerous falling on the backs of legs.
Right.
I'm not talking about the aesthetics of the game. And
right.
Look, but what this other person was saying is, if every offense is going to do it, every action has a reaction. So what's the defense going to do? The defense is now going to push.
Yep.
And the defense is now going to do it. And he goes, let me tell you, Doc, it's going to be low man wins. And when he said the defense's reaction to it and so forth, it changed my mind a little bit on this maybe being a dangerous play for the neck. I'm not saying if you don't outlaw it, someone's going to be paralyzed, but I'm saying the risk is there. If now you're having both sides, okay, they're not linked, low man wins and both sides pushing from behind, you're doubling the fall on the backs of legs risk,
right,
and high ankles and this, that, the other, but also increasing the risk of neck injury. And it was an interesting conversation, and obviously I'm keeping it off the record in terms of names. But if the NFL really goes to this level of analysis, I agree with Dean. It's going to be outlawed.
Yeah.
In some ways you'd say keep it because it's an offensive game and you want to see fourth downs and whatever. But the point that I learned was they'll find a way to stop it, but it may not be the safest way.
Yeah, that's what they're worried about, the reaction. That's interesting. Yeah,
the reaction to it. So that's why I wanted to bring up that Dean Blandino podcast. But I think the rule's going to change.
Yeah, no, it kind of takes away the integrity of the fourth down and just short yardage situations and stuff. If both teams are just pushing against each other, if it's just a 7-on-7, basically.
I think it'd be sexier to say that. I don't know. You should get Dean Blandino's. The rule's going to change. Is it going to be just that you can't push?
Right.
Or is it easier to say you can't line up in that tight of a formation? Make
a formation penalty or something.
Kind of deal. I don't know. But I do know when the Chiefs lined up feigning that formation, they were never going to push Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
They were just going to run outside once they got him caught up inside. Kind of thing.
The other one I want to get your take on is the recent report card from the NFLPA polling people about a whole bunch of stuff, locker room conditions and coaching staff, training staff, stuff like that. Even I had questions. Does training staff include the medical staff, the head athletic trainer, all that stuff?
Okay. My reaction to it, in some ways, and as a fan, I love that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's great to see this stuff. And, some of the interesting things is, as a fan, I found it interesting that the Patriots are the only team in the NFL that have their own dedicated plane, yet their travel arrangements were down, according to that survey.
Yeah.
Not sure how or why that is.
Yeah, that's confusing.
Right? I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in the general public, like, oh, Patriots are the only one with their own logoed plane. And I know Kraft rents it out for other purposes, but apparently they don't like that plane based on this survey, if you believe the survey. I think it's great. It's great fodder, etc. I don't know how scientific it is.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. Look,
I was even reading there's some things that if you get a bunch of a certain amount of like F's, it's just going to be an F. Like, you know what I mean? They cherry picked a certain amount of grades. I don't know.
And they cherry picked out the comments.
Right.
I think the NFLPA will forever do this survey.
Oh, absolutely. It's they're getting what they want out of it. I think.
They're able to, thumb their nose or one of their fingers at some ownership and some teams.
They can't do it directly, but they do it through this list.
And the comments are anonymous. And it seems like if there's one or two comments and then you're done. I mean, look, do you ever want to have, my wife doesn't listen to this podcast, so it's okay. Do you ever want to have rats or in the locker room?
What about emotional support rats?
The answer clearly is no. Okay. Now, if you're telling me that Jacksonville knew about the rats, did nothing about it for 3 or 4 weeks, that's different.
That's different. Yes.
I don't know about you guys. We had a mouse, turned out more than one, in the pantry at the house. We tried to get rid of them. We called in an exterminator. We got rid of food. I mean, that was a 3-4 week process before we finally, all the traps were negative, kind of thing. I mean, I live in a clean home. No, just kidding. No, I live in a home with little kids.
I've been there. I didn't put any
no. Are you kidding me? There's food dropped on the floor everywhere from the kids. Okay, I mean, we try and clean it up, but you got little kids. Okay,
I thought that was a dog shop. What's he doing?
Yeah, the dog gets fed enough that
he does.
She doesn't. Oh, anyways, I'm just saying. So it seemed like Yelp.
Yeah.
If you had a good meal, you don't really say you had a good meal at that restaurant. But if the waitress was rude to you, you hammer.
You go crazy.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, look, some of it was fun. It was interesting. I
remember talking to you on the phone. A key comment, you're like, I think the Chiefs, they had like an F in one of their athletic training, whatever. No one's not going to go there due to that score because they're trying to win a title. But from a media standpoint for the team, it's annoying, right? To have to deal with that. Oh, we have an F in this.
I found it interesting. I mean,
but from a player, you're not going to not go to the team.
Look, from the NFLPA perspective, I get it's not a good look if players don't feel comfortable reporting their injuries.
Yep.
I don't know if it's true or not. But the Chiefs had an athletic trainer, kind of got panned there. But don't you remember the Chiefs? Winning a Super Bowl because of what they did with Patrick Mahomes
and their campaign for their training staff.
They were the healthiest team at 6'4" all year long.
I can understand that they don't get an A,
right?
Because maybe top to bottom, there was the 52nd and 53rd player weren't as happy as the first and second player.
Right.
I can understand they don't get an A because of that, but to get an F, I mean, that it's almost like it's being done for a Yelpish media response.
They're picking, they probably got 3 S and they're like, all right, it's an F. You know what I mean? It's just
someone else showed me something that was talking about it, and I don't know if I'll show it on here or whatever. But basically, he said, "Hey, and if you really look at it, and apparently it's been taken down since the NFL website, the NFLPA website, it says on there that data last source between 3/1/2022 and 4/1/2022. I don't know what that means. They didn't have a survey last year. I don't know if the website is wrong and this data source thing. It's just like, it's easy to say the poll said this, but unless you have the questions and the full responses and the full range of responses, it's great. I think it's great for attention and media,
too
whatever.
Simple to just give it a letter.
But you can't just boom, and as a result of that, I think like anything, it's the nuance in terms of what happens there.
Well, we're over time because Evan Silva is always great and always comes with his own questions. We got a host of stuff at the website: baseball injuries, Jose Quintana. Obviously, LeBron coverage continues. Jumping on some March Madness stuff. UCLA kid Jalen Clark.
So next week we're gonna book. You just got to get the specifics.
Yeah.
Jeff Goodman.
There you go.
He's big in
He's all
basketball.
over it.
He's all
Yeah.
over it. Yep, absolutely.
That's great.
March Madness stuff and NBA stuff, right? He's all over basketball. And we'll have him on as our guest next week. But 2 Beast of the Week ones, I mean, we can make them easy.
I do have a question on Quintana. He has the broken rib. Is that something to do maybe with his age? Is that going to prevent him from coming back? Because he is over 34. Sorry, I'm just like he's the number. He's one of the Mets.
I'm about to go downstairs and see patients. A 35-year-old would be a young man.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a
Pitching
rib
wise,
stress
though.
fracture.
Yeah.
Pitching wise is a different story, but I'm
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
his rib's gonna heal. It's just about
Okay.
getting his arm back up and his legs. And, and
The ramp up, I'm worried about.
the ramp up.
Yes,
that's what's going to get him is the ramp up.
Right.
The injury itself is going to heal. It's
I was
the
barbing
ramp
him
up.
with the question, but
Yeah.
no, I don't know what you.
Chris Sale last year had it similar timing, and he made it back in July. So that'd be.
That's why we're
kinda right
saying
on
3
time.
months.
Yeah.
Minimum 3 months. I mean, this is a long time.
For sure.
So
Kobe's of the week. First one's an obvious choice. Andrew Voorhees, the USC lineman, offensive lineman, tore his ACL doing the combine drills on Sunday. Still had the bench press on Monday. Got out there with crutches, and I don't even remember how many reps he did. I just
230.
remember
I think it was 230. I believe.
38.
Yeah, 38 of 230
Of
or
2,
250 or something like that.
No,
Yeah.
it's
I just remember the video being a
it's-
minute, and I got to like 40 seconds. I was like, I get the point.
It's 235.
Oh, 235. Okay, that's the number.
It's
Yeah.
well, it's 235. It's 245s on each side,
Right.
plus the bar.
Right.
Okay.
So it's 235. That's the standard. And 38 is a good number.
Yeah.
But you know what I took away from that? I saw the video. At first, I was like, oh, he's a beast.
So
Two
you had 30,
things.
38 reps. Yeah. Sorry.
Two things to take away from that. Number one, they have changed the combine some. It used to be you did the measurements in your bench press the first day.
Yeah.
They don't do the bench press the first day anymore because some people complain that you maxed out and you were tired and it affects your ability to do drills.
Right.
Even a running back or
What is your opinion on
linebacker.
that? Do you agree with that?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
if you do a max effort and you really are trying to get whatever, you're trying to set a PR, a personal record, can you be a little bit sore? Sure.
Mhm.
And so they do it at the end. They let you do your drills and everything else first. That's why after he tore his ACL, he came back.
Right.
Kudos to him for doing it and trying it. Like, you don't really need your legs, but still, I mean, the guy came in a big old leg brace. Injuries happen every year at the combines. Every other year, someone blows out a pec. David Ojabo last year tore his Achilles at a pro day.
Mhm.
I mean, this stuff unfortunately happens. Hard to prevent it. I mean, I get it. You'd say, well, why are you doing it on turf indoors? I mean, you can get into that
Start
argument,
the debate again.
you know. But I think he qualifies as Beast of the Week. But I will say this: when I saw him, I think that's why I texted you guys. He's a tackle. I mean,
Yeah.
let me tell you, tackles don't do 38 reps.
Yeah.
Okay,
No.
they got people do barrel chest, short arms. They'll do 40 and 50, right? Tackles a big long arm. You don't want someone. to be able
He
to do
shifted
38
over in
reps.
college due to injury and just having the ability to do that. But yeah, he's a guard at heart. That's where he'll get drafted.
He'll
Yeah.
get drafted guard. He could
Yeah.
be a swing tackle a little
Right,
bit,
yeah.
a guy who moves. But yeah, it's like he doesn't have NFL arm
Yes,
span.
yeah.
I was like, the way he's doing, I was like, no, he's not
Yeah.
a tackle.
Well, guard should be a little better for the ACL recovery, correct?
A little bit better.
Yeah.
A little bit better. Yes, that's true.
The other one from the week is KJ Osborne. It's coming out that he helped save someone from a car crash in Austin, Texas, just in his free time. So good guy to have at the scene. He's crazy athletic. So
Yeah, but the fact that he stopped,
right.
I think a lot of people will be like, oof, that's not for me. The
Right.
sirens are coming. that the fact that he stopped and he was there. I mean, honestly, it's refreshing to hear about a car accident thing and then NFL players on the good side of the story, right?
Yeah.
Not the how many times do we hear like the Georgia situation?
Yeah.
You know, I mean the badness of that, right?
Mhm.
Started off the combines. You hear about the negative, so we'll give them co-beasts of the week. 2 good stories of good guys and good toughness. Both of them can be co-beasts of the week. All right, guys, overtime here. Thanks for watching. Thanks to Evan Silva. Thanks, you guys. Always fun. And
Thank you.
next week, we're already into basketball and baseball, but Evan got us pivoted to baseball, and Jeff Goodman will get us full into basketball. Good timing leading into March Madness, etc. Sports Injury Central podcast. Thanks for watching.